Hello, welcome to the Connected Table Live. We're your hosts, Melanie Young and David Ransom, your insatiably curious culinary couple. Today's show is our Thanksgiving special, and we're going locavore. We live in what I'd normally say was New York's verdant Hudson Valley, but we are now in a gorgeous white Thanksgiving, a blanket of snow everywhere we look. We are very excited to have as our guests today Jim Treesice, who is the president of the New York Wine and Grape Foundation in our first segment, and then Jason Grisanti and Jeremy Kidd of Warwick Valley Winery and Distillery in our second. So this is a tribute to New York State, and you know, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, and New York State wineries are making it big. New York is the third largest wine and grape region in the United States, and this month, Wine Enthusiast named New York as the Wine Region of the Year. Moving on in our tour to New York, we're going to talk about another big category, which is ciders and spirits, with Jason Grisanti and Jeremy Kidd, who are the founders and partners of Warwick Winery and Distillery. They make wine, they make cider, and they make spirits, and they have an incredible story to tell and a great history. I'm going to hand this over to David. I just want to say one thing. We're going to start with cider because cider is the fastest growing hard cider. Let's talk hard cider, is the fastest growing beverage alcohol in the nation now. I just told a friend that. She's like, really? And a lot of it, there are a lot of reasons for that. And a lot of people are guessing, is it because women are drinking more or millennials? But it is big news. And we are going to be talking with Jason and Jeremy, who make one hell of a cider. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Well, it's a pleasure.
I don't know if Jason's on the line.
Well, we have Jeremy. This is Jeremy, and you may have to say this is Jeremy and Jason when you both talk.
Okay, that's fine.
Well, needless to say, welcome to the show, Jeremy. It's so nice to have you on and talk about really one of my favorite wineries in New York, to be honest. And the cider that you guys make, Doc's Draft, is not only one of the more well-known ciders, hard ciders out there, but also I think one of the best as well. Not just apple, but pear as well, which I find just delicious. And you guys have also started a new distillery in the last couple of years. And so we want to talk a little bit about that too.
Great. Just before we start, I should probably point out that it was Jason's father who actually started the cider business back in 1994. Jason and I were still in high school at the time, but we were sort of, Jason was a little bit more involved than I was, but we were both involved, even from the early days. We started out bootlegging the ciders to our high school friends back in '94 before we got officially into the business.
Were you running it in the General Lee, or did you have a different kind of car?
I think it was a old VW.
Well, let's just take it back a little further, and you're in the Hudson Valley. Let's talk about where you're located and the fact you're in the lower Hudson Valley amidst a beautiful area filled with apple orchards.
Yeah, so
right?
we're right in the middle of Warwick Valley, which has, I think, 6 apple orchards, including ours. We grow about 20 acres and over 60 varieties of apples.
So you're ripe with the fruit that makes not only your cider, but you have these incredible. You have the first fruit distillery. It's New York's first fruit distillery, actually, the American Fruits Distillery. So you've got the product. You also have some of the most verdant land in the area, right?
Some of the most what?
Verdant. I would say, what is it? Conducive to growing.
Oh yeah. Well,
yeah,
not only do we have the upland for the orchards, but we also have around 50 acres currently of the black dirt, which is the famous onion growing region, which we're now sourcing all our corn for our bourbon.
That's right. Which is actually the official dirt of New York State, which we just found out as we were doing a little bit of research.
Only New York would have official dirt, like the official dirt.
Yeah, I saw that article in the New York Times. That was pretty exciting.
It's called muck soil. Soil.
The Black Dirt region is just above Warwick and Orange County, and it's a really neat spot because it's basically a floodplain that dried out or was dried out, shall we say, by by farmers back in I think the 1800s,
Exactly.
and it's one of the most fertile valleys in the country, especially for growing onions. And the black dirt onions from Orange County are some of the most famous in
I've never
oniondom,
had
shall
it.
we say? I know,
I have
Melanie.
not had a
Well,
black onion. My goodness.
we'll get you
I'll have
some.
to try one. I only have a day.
Yeah,
So,
but and
yeah.
you actually took the name Black Dirt as the name of your distillery, which I thought was very interesting as well.
We did. We've had a wine for a couple decades actually now called Black Dirt Red, and the grapes for the wine are not grown in the black dirt. They're actually grown in the Finger Lakes. But the name was so sort of popular because it was unique and it just created a lot of attention. And when we started working on the plans for the new distillery, and the new distillery, if you ever come visit, is situated on what we call an island in the black dirt. So you have this little bedrock that sits in the middle of the black dirt. And so we're surrounded by 40 acres of black dirt, and that's where all the corn is from. So we thought Black Dirt Distillery has a great ring, but also so does Black Dirt Bourbon.
Absolutely, and you won some awards with your bourbon as well, and you also do an Applejack from the apples that you all grow too, right?
Yeah, Applejack's actually the first product that we ever distilled, going back to, I believe it was 2002, which was the original idea for the distillers to do all fruit from the Hudson Valley, pears, apples, grapes, do grappa. And then as the laws changed, we changed our license to allow us to distill grains as well. So then we started doing gin and bourbon. And the Applejack, some of the Applejack we have in the market has been aged over 6 years in oak.
Wow, that's wonderful.
What is your biggest production in terms of the categories? I mean, you started with cider, right?
We started with cider, and that is still our biggest production. We're doing about 200,000 gallons of cider a year now, and so that's by far our biggest production. The wine is about 25,000 gallons, which is the next largest in terms of production.
What are the apples that you use for your cider? Are they
We
a
use
mix
a blend.
or are they specific?
It's a mix. It's a blend, mostly dessert, what we call dessert fruit, which is your sweet eating apple, and we use some cider varieties. It actually changes a little bit from depending on what time of year it is, and we're basically looking for a consistency in flavor profile, acidity, and sugar levels to create the Doc's Draft hard cider.
And much like a vintage of grapes, I assume apple vintages can change as well from year to year, depending on the growing conditions. If you have a drier year, a wetter year, a hotter year, or a cooler year, you're going to get a different product. So you need to be able to compensate for that in the bottle by using different varieties of apples in your mix.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things. It's sort of one of the things we actually struggled with early on was getting the market to sort of accept that. And over the years, we've tried to make the product as consistent as possible. Although, like you said, you're going to have slight variation from year to year. We think probably the average consumer is not going to notice this, and we've found that since it is a craft product, a lot of people are willing to accept that there are slight variations as long as the product is good, of course. But overall, in the market, we've found that people really want consistency in the product. So we've really strived to maintain this consistent flavor no matter what time of year we're making it, or year to year.
Well, that's certainly true, and in consistency you get repeat business and repeat buyers as well. Cider has taken off so much over the last couple of years. What do you think is driving the renewed interest in cider? It even made it to CBS Sunday Morning on the food issue this past Sunday, where they interviewed a Hudson Valley cider maker. Unfortunately, it wasn't you, but it was a wonderful piece. I was like, oh my God, they're going to do cider. It's going to be Jeremy and Jason, and then it wasn't. But it was so nice to see not only that they interviewed somebody who was making cider, but it was a local Hudson Valley cider maker that they interviewed. But cider's taking off everywhere. It's not just in New York. It's not just in the Hudson Valley. It's nationwide. What's driving the resurgence in interest in cider these days, do you think?
I think it's a few things. I mean, there's definitely a role in the whole gluten-free trend going on, whether people need to be or just choose to be gluten-free. Cider creates a great gluten-free alternative to beer, for instance. I think there's historical American roots to hard cider that people are now becoming interested in. I don't know exactly why it took so long. I always ask the question, why did it take so long? I mean, we started Doc's in 1994, but we really started sort of commercially selling it, trying to get into the market first in New York City in 2002, and even then, 12 years ago, cider was a really tough sale in New York, and I just remember thinking, when is this going to catch on? Because it makes so much sense. I mean, in Europe, it's been a big category for a very long time, way before it sort of took off here. And of course, pre-Prohibition, it was the number one consumed beverage in the United States. So I think it's just, no one can predict exactly when these things are going to happen, but we sort of knew that it was only a matter of time before the market caught on.
Well, and New York has such a huge apple industry to begin with. You would have think that it would have recaught back on a long time before this. But, it's nice to see that it has, and that's really what counts. The ciders coming out of New York, especially yours, are really wonderful ciders. I think they really lead the category in so many ways.
Yeah, well, and now you have so many ciders to choose from. So, people always ask us what we think about the competition, and really, so far, it's just been great because it's just helped lift the category, create a lot of awareness, and we're in a position where we can promote other ciders and our own, and we've just been growing right through it. So it's really only helped us so far.
Well, there's some other theories. First of all, I just want to make note. I mean, this is how big cider is right now. According to A.E. Nielsen's tracking of cider sales off-premise, sales of hard cider increased 89%, or about $280 million in sales as of data compiled the end of April 2014. And data since April 2014 shows about a 78% increase. So the projections are that this could become a $500 million industry. Now, one of the things that I heard was that what might be also fueling this is the increase in millennial consumers and women who are wine consumers, also because cider has a lower ABV, and that is appealing to that audience. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I mean, I think cider it's appealing to all people, really. I mean, people ask us what our demographic is, and I would say I'm not sure we really have one. I mean, it's anyone who's 21 to 100 years old. I mean, we have customers, men, women, of all ages, at least, of course, over 21. But the interest is broad. It's not. I wouldn't say it's specific to one group, at least from what we see.
Huh. Well, the gluten-free, that we had some raised eyebrows looking at each other when you said that, because that one did not cross our path, but that probably is driving it as well, since that's becoming a big issue with any kind of food or beverage. So that's very, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any numbers on it, but I mean, anecdotally, I see it a lot. Just people saying that they've given up gluten and they don't drink beer anymore, so they've switched over to hard cider. I mean, and if you notice now, I mean, including our cider, they all say prominently gluten-free on the label.
Well, everything does. I mean, we went to the fancy food show. It was like gluten-free, 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 GMO-free, and I was like, is it taste-free? Before we move on to your other spirits, which we'd like to do while we still have time, I do want to note that your website, you can purchase Doc's Draft. It's ranges from $4.99 to $5.99 a bottle, right?
Yes, it does. I think it's $4.99 to $6.99. Some of the seasonals we offer, this is sort of the end of our pumpkin season, but perfect for the Thanksgiving holiday. We do a pumpkin spice cider, which is one of our most popular seasonal ciders.
I think I had that recently at a restaurant here in Gardner. I mean, I'm a pumpkin head, so I love anything with pumpkins. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So
Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, we did. We absolutely did. So I just want to note before we go on to your spirits that the website, your website is?
You can get to it from www.docsHardCider.com or wvwinery.com and click on the cider link.
And you can ship to any state that allows shipping, right?
Yeah, any state that allows shipping. We have a list on the marketplace.
All right.
Other than your seasonal offerings, you have a core group of ciders that you make that you offer every year? And I know there's an apple cider. There is a pear cider that you make as well at times, right?
Yep.
Which is fabulous and really one of my favorites.
Round.
Yeah.
The apple, pear, raspberry are all available year round.
Right. Do you tend to make your ciders in different levels of sweetness as well, or are they all kind of the same across the board? Because I know if you go to different countries around the world that make cider, they each have kind of a different style. Is there a New York style for cider?
I don't know that there is a New York style yet. I mean, there's such a broad range of ciders coming out of New York. I mean, even Doc's, we released our first very, very dry cider this year, which was called Doc's Gold Rush, because made exclusively from the Gold Rush apple. Mm-hmm. And that one we allowed to ferment completely dry, a different style, sort of champagne-style cider. But most of our cider offerings that we consider semi-dry.
So almost the one you were just describing is almost like the Asturian cider from Spain, which is very dry,
fabulous,
very dry and very delicately flavored and very delicately balanced with the bead, the bubbles, etc.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to your distilled. Let's move on to your distilled products, because you were the first fruit distillery in New York State.
We were.
And why don't you tell us, you have Black Dirt Distillery, and then you have American Fruits Fine Brandies and Liqueurs. Why don't we start with American Fruits Fine Brandies and Liqueurs and talk a little bit about the evolution of that product line?
Sure. So back when we got our license, our state license in 2001 or 2002, it was called a Class C license, and there was no A1 or D license available at the time. I'll just briefly explain what they are. Class C license allows you to distill anything fruit-based. So all your ingredients have to be fruit, but you can distill apple brandy, pear brandy, grappa, grape brandy, etc. And then in 2003, the A1 license came around, which was a basically smaller version of the commercial distiller's license, which was the A license. The A license was sort of prohibitively expensive, and which is why we didn't see really any distilleries pre-2005 that were not C licenses. I think there were 2 C licenses at the time, us and Knapp Vineyards. And so because of that, we were...
And for the listeners, Knapp's been a winemaking family up in the Finger Lakes for many, many years, a couple of generations at least. So they're great products that they make as well. But go on.
Yeah, and they do some great brandies and grappa. Yeah. And so we started doing just fruit, and it made sense. We were a winery, we were an orchard, so our main focus originally was the apple and pear brandies. And then in 2005 or 2003, the A1 license came about, and then soon after that, the farm distiller license came about, which is sort of similar to the farm winery license, except for distilled spirits. So at that point, we changed our license from a fruit license to a farm distiller's license, which allowed us to distill anything as long as a preponderance was the wording at the time. Now I think says more specifically 75% of the ingredients have to be New York grown. So
yes.
At that point, we started making a bourbon and a gin, and continuing with the apple brandy. And so our big focus on spirits right now is our Black Dirt Applejack and our Black Dirt Bourbon.
Well, there's both fabulous products. It's funny that you didn't come up with preponderance vodka or something like that. That would have been that would have been a fun one.
Someone's going to start it now.
I know, exactly. Right. Well, now they don't have to, because it could just be 75% vodka. Anyway, right. The Applejack obviously was made famous down in New Jersey by Laird's and is nationwide. But Applejack really is a localized product that's been made wherever apples were grown and distilleries were for 150 or 200 years. So, and you guys really have carried the torch in making a fabulous one, in my opinion. The Black Dirt Applejack is really one of the best ones out there.
Well, thank you. And the Black Dirt Applejack, I should also note, kind of a cool fact about it, that it is a bottled in bond Applejack, which means that it's bottled under your bond so that you control the distillery has to control every step of the process, from the fermentation to the distillation, the bottling, and the aging. You can't subcontract out any of the steps. So it's sort of like a stamp of authenticity to put that on the label, bottled in bond, and it has to be 100 proof as well.
Basically, so in winemaking terms, that would be an estate made or an estate grown.
Right.
A estate-grown wine where everything takes place from grape to bottle, or in this case, from apple to bottle.
Right.
And Jonagold apples, specifically, I'm seeing on your website, Jonagold apples, and then aged in charred American oak.
So, those are two sort of unique things that we do. We use a single variety of apple called the Jonagold, and that's a cross between the Jonathan and the Golden Delicious. The reason we use that is because it just has a great flavor profile. and it has great sugar, which of course we need for the fermentation to create alcohol.
And it's a good eating apple, too, if I might add.
It's a great eating apple. It's
very good eating apple. We only have a couple of minutes left, but I want to touch on your bourbon and your gin before we wrap up. Your gin is brand new, but you're making your bourbon for a little while. It's gotten some great reviews. It's easy to drink, in my opinion. Tell us a little bit about that and what your philosophy is on the gin, on the bourbon, and then also just touch on the gin, too.
The Warwick gin.
So for the Blackbear Bourbon, obviously the name, black dirt, all the corn, which is a very high percentage of the ingredients, in this case 80% corn, is all grown in the black dirt, which we believe is creating this terroir effect for the bourbon, which is something that no one, to my knowledge, has ever discussed in terms of bourbon, but we think it's present in ours. Another sort of interesting thing about our bourbon is that it's aged 3 years, so while that might not seem like a long time in the grand scheme of bourbons, it's pretty long for the craft sort of world, and we think it's at a real sweet spot because it allows the bourbon to still be grain forward, but yet have a lot of the developed flavors from the oak. So it's aged 3 full seasons in the charred oak, which each season you basically have the bourbon breathing in and out of these barrels and creating this complexity, layers of. In our case, I think you find chocolate and a little toffee, caramel, and then but the sort of up front you get this great cracked corn nose, which is only present because it's not aged too long, where that sort of grain forwardness goes away.
Well, we were not going to have time to go into the Warwick gin too much because we're going to have to wrap. So I want to quickly have you tell us where listeners, and you'll come back, of course, next year, where listeners can find more about your distilled spirits. The website is Black Dirt Distillery, correct?
The website is blackdirtdistillery.com. The Warwick gin is actually under the winery website, which is wvwinery.com. And in New York City, all the spirits are available at Astor Wines, also Park Avenue Wines, Union Square Wines has a few selections from the portfolio.
Well, we want to thank you, Jeremy Kidd, for being on our show today and wish you and your family a very, very happy Thanksgiving. And we'd like to raise an invisible glass tomorrow, a toast to you for your wonderful product line. Thank you very much for being on our show.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Such a pleasure. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and we look forward to toasting with you sometime again in the near future to talk about the gin and others.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Great. Folks, this is the Connected Table Live on W4CY Radio and iHeartRadio, and we look forward to talking to you all next week, and we hope you have a happy Thanksgiving.